Om Shanti. Firstly, before taking up the subject, I'd just like to express a word of appreciation and thanks for all the good wishes that have been reaching me. Some of you have personally met me to tell me, others have sent me letters and emails and cards, and others have been sending me their silent vibrations, and all of it has been helping a great deal. And so yes, the body is definitely much better and much stronger. A little bit further to go, but it'll happen. So thank you. And the subject for tonight, no prizes for guessing where it was taken from. Stop and stock. And it's very beautiful that in the Avyakt revision course, Murli, that we heard this morning, many English words in that, and in this Murli also, the two key things that Baba wants us to do over the next 6 months, again in English. And so Baba's reaching out to all your hearts very directly, without any translations or interpretations in between. Somebody made a comment about how open and unlimited Baba's method of teaching is, and how it's possible for one teacher to address 25,000 people who are sitting in front, all ages, all shapes, all colors, all sizes, but also all levels of effort in terms of spirituality. Those whose life has been dedicated for 69 years, and those who have just begun to take a few steps on the spiritual path, and not just those, but also the hundreds of thousands that must have been listening online to Baba, and to be able to reach out to all those hearts and satisfy them all, and give them a sense of stimulation and enthusiasm and power that's going to take them further forward. Now that is quite something. And so I myself sometimes wonder, what more is there left for Baba to tell us? The 18 chapters of the Gita are complete. They were complete before all of you took birth, the Sakar Murlis. And since then, Avyakt Murlis of such deep wisdom and insights as we heard this morning, but also as we continue to hear each time Baba comes. And so that must be at least how many Murlis? 36 Murlis, 36 years, so 36 Murlis on the subject of holy that we must have heard. Because Baba's been coming every time. It's holy every time, it's Shivratri. And is there anything new under the sun for Baba to say? For Baba comes from beyond the sun. And so there is something new. And what I found very striking and new was Baba's definition of the stock we have to accumulate. And Baba's used this word accumulation of stock before, but I found it very new, the way Baba defined it this time. So stop, and this season itself, Baba has taken that up a few times. And so Baba didn't elaborate on that this time. And we may come back to it, but otherwise I think anyway, lots of theoretical lessons on that. But then it remains to practice it. And when you're practicing, when the going is good, when things aren't a storm, when there isn't a tsunami that's coming up to you, but you're actually maintaining everything in a good way. And if during that period when things are going well, there is the practice of stop, and just seeing how powerful the break is and to what extent the soul is able to experience that stop and silence and Baba, then when there is a situation which isn't so easy to deal with, then that practice will help at that moment of need. without the prior practice, then when a situation does come, and then I'm trying to tell myself, stop, why isn't this working? Well, it's unlikely that it's going to work because I haven't checked and tested my brakes. But if I've been practicing, then I've checked and tested, and then it serves me well at that moment of dire need. But the stock that Baba spoke of, and Baba's first aspect of stock was the effort that you make for yourself and the results that you've accumulated as a result of that effort. And so that was one definition. And when I first heard Baba say this, just a wave in my mind in which I was thinking, well, effort for the self, and I thought using Gyan, staying happy, be content. But then Baba defined that separately. The second one, in which Baba said, the accumulation of being able to stay content and being able to give contentment to others. And then Baba linked it up beautifully with the aspect of being able to give blessings and receive blessings. Again, we've heard Baba take up this theme of giving and receiving blessings this season, but also past seasons now, many, many times. But this time Baba linked it directly with this aspect of staying content and being able to give contentment to others. And then the third aspect, and it's interesting that Baba positioned it as third. And so within my entire stock of accumulation, it's only 1/3. The other two are the rest of it. But 1/3, and that then Baba defined as service, and then very specifically many different aspects of things we have to watch out for in terms of service. And so these first two were the most interesting ones for me. The third one, I think again, you've heard Baba talk about it from time to time in terms of Sakar Murlis and Avyakt Murlis both, in which Baba will talk about going beyond the seeking, the desire of return in any form, name and honor and fame and facilities or praise, any of these things. So, and losing the awareness of I and letting the one who is up above be the one who's working through you and getting things done. And that is the reality, that is what is happening. But to stay in that awareness, and Baba said that's what's going to create the accumulation of power as a result of service. And if there's been service, but it hasn't been within those categories, then the impact of that is just exhaustion. I won't ask anyone to raise their hands now, but I think most of us sitting here have been through that, where it's been service, 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 and doing, but the result of it has been not a sense of recharging and fulfillment and filling, but rather it's been a feeling of expenditure of energy and a loss of power, and it's been that state where I've used my inner reserves and resources rather than filled myself with more as a result of service. So that's not what service is about. But then it's because it hasn't been within the parameters that Baba has described. The consciousness of the one above, no desires for the self, and so on and so on. So that's pretty clear also. And it's interesting that although all these ideas of knowledge are so clear, yet when we're not paying attention, then these things come up and there's a reaction. But why? I've done so much, and how come I'm not getting the return of it? I'm not experiencing the results. But Baba's already explained. And so something very much to be aware of and to keep in mind. But that's 1/3 of the accumulation. And the other two aspects, well, as I say, my first awarenesses, I heard Baba talk about this thing about Baba used the word effort, the accumulation of the power that comes from effort and the immediate results of effort. And then Baba's defining the contentment separately. And so what does it mean in terms of effort for the self? And more I began to think about it in terms of shorthand. So the contentment is the stage of dharana, and the service is the fourth subject anyway, that's pretty clear. But the first two subjects, the subjects of Jnana and Yoga, and of course, Baba puts it very beautifully sometimes when he says, I've come to teach you Raj Yoga. And if you position it like that, all the teachings are for one purpose, to be able to help me experience my relationship with God. And as a result of that, to be able to attain mastery over the self. And so Baba states very definitely that that is his purpose, that's what he's come to do. And what does God teach? God teaches Raj Yoga. And so in terms of my own personal effort, however much study it is I'm engaged in, the purpose of the study and the end result of that study is my communication with God, my relationship with God, and then the results of that are whatever follows from that. And so in terms of this aspect of the stock that's accumulated through effort, and it really is this, just these two aspects. What am I doing for myself? Not in terms of teaching, not in terms of service, but what is it that I'm doing for myself? Am I actually understanding deeply what it is God is explaining to me day by day? Understanding Baba's Murli in a very personal way on that level. And so my understanding of Gyan, and through my understanding of Gyan, my relationship with God. That is what effort is actually all about. And if there are things that are interfering in my link with God, my relationship with God, then let me go back to the study. For what is it that I haven't understood, that I'm allowing this interference to happen? Because Raj Yoga, my mind is my own property. Only I am responsible for what's going on in my mind. Nobody else can be responsible. And so, understanding that it's Raj Yoga, my own sovereignty over myself. And why have I come to Baba? Maybe at first it was the attraction of the knowledge. Knowledge is very beautiful as I hear it. It was for me. And I had no idea about yoga, but the knowledge was attractive. It was answering many questions. But then, once I understood that this is yoga, then I realized that this is why I've come to Baba. And yes, within that, I'd never anticipated that there would be a whole thing of service, but you discover that as you go along. But even that, it's only possible to make that useful and fruitful where there is this aspect of the first stage, my effort for myself, the depth of my understanding, and my ability to use that understanding to keep my connection very clearly and strongly linked with God. And Baba spoke about the accumulation of the visible fruit of this. And yes, to whatever extent I make that connection with Baba, the return of that and the accumulation of all the treasures that are God's qualities and God's powers and God's virtues, I fill myself with those, but also the visible fruit, the transformation that's happening within the soul as a result of this. And it's something that you can see in your own life. When you see the transformation at work within yourself, then you're content, you know you're moving in the right direction. And if you're not seeing that transformation, then it's a question to ask yourself, well, what's happening to my yoga? Why am I not seeing the results of my yoga? Or if I'm not having good yoga, then what is it that I don't understand? And to go back and check through all of that. So that I found very powerful and a very important stimulus to move ahead, to be able to understand what Baba meant by effort. And then the second thing, to stay content, and that's only one part of the story, because I've known souls who'll say, oh, I keep myself happy and content no matter what is going on around me. And it's possible that they might be cutting themselves off and not seeing what's going on around them. It happens. But the other side then is the counterbalance, and then you do get a clear picture, and you do know what's going on. Am I making others around me content also? And if I'm not, I can't just dismiss it and say, oh, well, that's their problem. Brahmins are exceedingly clever, and so there's always an answer for everything. And if people around me are not content, I've seen how some souls deny responsibility at that moment and say, well, that's their problem. It's their sanskar. Why are they upset? They shouldn't be upset. There's something wrong with them. Nothing wrong with me, I'm fine. But it's both things together. To be able to stay content and then to be able to give contentment to others around me. Can't be just half the story, but also it can't be only the other half of the story, that I'm chasing my tail trying to make others content and forgetting that the starting point has to be my own contentment. And the state of my own contentment, of course it's linked. I can't have one aspect sorted out and not have an impact on the other, or one aspect not sorted out, it's going to impact the other. And so that state where, yes, effort for the self is on the right track, Jnana and yoga is steadily deepening, growing, developing, both things, the Jnana and the yoga, and I'm more and more able to keep my mind content. Instead of my mind chasing around here and there and wherever and feeling that state where things are never quiet inside. Interesting, when there is that state of contentment, there's a great stability and a strength because things are quiet and under the surface deep and strong. And the upheaval of discontent, and there isn't that power that's accumulated within the self. And so yes, first step, through Jnana and yoga, not service, very dangerous to allow my contentment to depend on service, because it makes it totally externalized, but also it makes me very, very dependent on other people and situations, whether it's Brahmins or non-Brahmins. Service involves relationships with the whole wide world. And so how can I let my contentment be dependent on things like that? I just don't know what's going to happen. One of the things that I've learned since December is that you just have to be in the present and be content with what's happening now and take advantage of what the present has to offer. No plans for the future because you don't know how things are going to turn out. No postponement for the future because again you don't know what tomorrow holds. And so at this moment, where I am, content with the present now, at this point. And if I can take benefit and advantage from whatever the present has to offer, then tomorrow is going to be fine. I don't need to think about it or worry about it. But my contentment will be the power with which I move ahead. So, first step, my own inner contentment. And the reality that at least if I've created that state of contentment within the self, I'll be more able, more capable of trying to give contentment to others. And it's a long journey, giving contentment to others, in the sense that you're in contact with how many people? Just the Brahmin family itself is big, but everybody you come into contact with, Lokik, Alokik, it's unlimited. Can't count how many souls you're going to make contact with. And then to be able to give contentment, I have to say to Baba, Baba, that's a tall order. But I know that at least if I maintain contentment, it's going to be much easier to try and give contentment to others. My own state of discontent is probably going to cause irritation, irritability in my relationship with others, Lokik and Alokik. Now, whatever the factors are that have caused the discontent, maybe anything, but a discontent soul isn't able to give contentment to anyone, no one. And so yes, first step, my own contentment. And then I can attempt it. I can at least try. And usually you find that if there's the intent, if there's that motivation, then what does come your way are their good wishes and their blessings. And that's a very powerful and beautiful stock to accumulate that's there for you at your moment of need. You never know when it is you're going to need the blessings and the cooperation and the support of others. And so it was something that Dadiji had said many years ago, and it's a scene I've never forgotten. Dadiji sitting with us in the history hall, so however big the group felt, it couldn't have been a very large group because it was just in the history hall. But so it must have been back in the 70s, 80s at some point. And Dadiji said, I'm always aware that when I leave, I don't want anyone's bad wishes or curses to reach me. I want to have lived in such a way that there's only good wishes that reach me and blessings that reach me. And when she spoke from her heart, and within that gathering, everybody could feel the power and, of course, the sincerity with which she was speaking. But she positioned it in that way that that was a motivation in her own life, that this is what I want to do. I want to make sure that there's nothing else that comes to me, only good wishes and blessings. And so, at least you can try. And of course, Baba explaining more about staying happy and giving happiness to others. But this thing about being content and then capable of being able to give contentment as far as is possible. And then the feedback of good wishes and blessings coming my way. And so the second stock that Baba spoke of this time, Baba's spoken about blessings and good wishes and the accumulation of that, but it was very beautifully put this time in a very different way. And then the third one, the aspect of service and the consciousness of the one who is working through us, but also reaching that stage of no desire, absolutely no desire for anything for myself. And you're seeing then the results of service, the success of service, but when Baba says stock, it's referring to the power that one feels as a result of whatever is the good karma that one has done. I was also seeing that in that second aspect of accumulation of good wishes and blessings, and the stock of that, it's an indication of service which is not vocal service, but service through karma. service in which you've made another content because you've done something for them. You haven't just given them gyan, but you've done something for them. And Madhuban is an amazing example of how much happens, and we're being given that experience of spiritual progress, but also a state of contentment because of all the different physical things that happen to take care of us, and how if any one of the departments didn't do the task that they had to do, then there would definitely be rumbles of discontent, or maybe even an uproar of discontent. One little statistic that I heard in Shantivan the day after Baba came, most of you were upstairs already, but the sister who was doing the announcements in Shantivan mentioned that 250,000 chapatis had been cooked in the 2 days, the 24th and the 25th, the day before Baba came and the day that Baba came. And probably that was also true for the next day, the 26th itself, the day after Baba came. But just imagine, can you even think about it? How high would the stack of 250,000 chapatis be? I can't even imagine it. And that's just one department that was able to give contentment to the souls who were living in Shantivan. Never mind what was happening in Gyansrovar and Pandavavan, but that's just Shantivan. So that's not just giving gyan, that's not just sitting and sending out good wishes. It's, roll up your sleeves and get on with it, and it's hard work. I don't know how many of you have ever rolled chapatis, and however if you have ever rolled more than 10 or 20 chapatis, so the figure is staggering, isn't it? But just one little way in which souls are being given contentment. And if you think about all the needs that a human body has from morning through afternoon till the night, and how Madhuban cares for all our needs, the spiritual needs, of course, the emotional needs, yes, you have the love of the daddies and the family and everything, but just the sheer physical needs that we have, and all of that being taken care of, and our heart very definitely gives a lot of good wishes and blessings for the souls who've provided all of that. And so an amazing lesson for us to carry back to our own places. I was just again reflecting on the role of, say, Bombay or Ahmedabad or Delhi, the places that we normally transit through coming to Madhuban. Madhuban, and of course it's a whole big setup that you have, but just the things that happen in all these other places to make our journey a comfortable one, to make all the facilities available for us in the way that we need them. And when the centre started, they didn't know that that's what they were going to be called upon to do. They thought a centre meant a place where people would come, hear gyan, and off they'd go. But things have turned out differently, and they've continued to do this service in the last 30 plus years. And they'll carry on with it till the end of the Kalpa. So my point in all of this, I see all of this is happening and it's bringing me contentment. Then the question, to what extent am I doing the same for others? And so thoughts, words, actions, attention on all of these things, and accumulation of stock and power, and a very important signal. Never mind what happens to the world. Never mind what's the next scene in the world drama. But I don't know what the scene of drama holds for me personally tomorrow. And so whatever I can accumulate, I want to do it now. Om Shanti.